Well, good morning and welcome to OCA Reconnects. My name is Jeff Bradshaw. I am the OCA past president, as well as the co-chair once again alongside our executive director, Joy, for OCA Reconnects. This is, of course, not what we imagined for this year's OCA annual conference. We should be gathering today for 3 days at Mississauga's Living Arts Center. But alas, it's not to be. We do believe, however, that the future is bright, and we're really excited for the program and opportunities that are a part of OCA Reconnects in the coming months. Just for a few moments, I'd like to talk to you about OCA Reconnects. We have a few different parts to share with you. First of all, our keynote day today. Our keynote this morning will begin shortly, and then the second keynote, focused on marketing and promotion, begins at 1:30 this afternoon. We have 2 sets of vendor days featuring presentations from our preferred vendors. One set took place last week, and the other is scheduled for April 5th and April 6th. March 29th and 30th feature 2 full days of workshops focused on 4 streams: COVID and beyond, mental health, safety and risk management, and marketing and promotion. And I'm really happy today to announce a new addition to OCA Reconnects. On Wednesday, May 11th, we'll be hosting an in-person event at Camp Robin Hood in Markham. OCA Camp Day will feature lunch, the presentation of our OCA annual awards, a pop-up exhibit hall with our preferred vendors, camp tours, and the chance for unique reunion of our honorary life members. So look for more information in the weeks ahead. And once again, a massive thanks, as always, to Howie and Sari Grossinger for making Camp Robin Hood available on May the 11th. Their generosity and support of OCA truly knows no bounds. A really special thanks today to the OCA Reconnects committee that work alongside Joy and I. Our stream chairs, Tom Appleyard, Aaron Sundstrom, Ian Wood, and Eva Peringer. OCA past presidents, Howie Grossinger and Eric Schendelman, who will lead us on OCA Camp Day on May the 11th. Our OCA conference consultant, Bev Unger, and significantly, our OCA office team members, Alex Houston and Rob Crew. For today, a couple of quick housekeeping items. We are going to keep folks on mute, and as our keynote speaker is presenting, we'll encourage folks to go off video to help us maintain bandwidth. We really want people to put your name and your camp name in your profile name for all of the Zoom meetings we have and sessions during OCA Connects. Lots of questions about recording of sessions. We have decided that we're not going to record OCA Reconnects, with one exception being today's Cooper Keynote. We decided to record the keynote today and make it available to OCA members in the future to share with your camp staff in advance of summer camp this year. Well, there's no doubt that we've struggled within the industry and as camp leaders and individuals navigating through these past few years with our collective and individual mental health. The OCA office team stands by, always, to connect us with support that's out there. There's a broad network of professionals that are in support of our industry, and a call or an email to the OCA office will provide that connection for you, an introduction for you to those that are available to offer a compassionate and helping hand. Well, for many of us today, so many of us, it's a challenging day as we remember and celebrate the life of our colleague and friend, Marc Cooper. It has been simply a staggering loss. Marc was renowned as a thoughtful, well-liked, and gifted member of our community. Marc spent 2 decades with OCA on various committees, leading workshops, and standing beside so many of us doing important work within our industry. Quite a few of us were fortunate to work alongside Marc and consider him a friend of the highest order. Marc's final contribution with OCA was as a member of the Spring into Summer Steering Committee that led last year's most successful online conference with over 10,000 attendees over a 3-month period last spring. We called ourselves the Baker's Dozen. There were 13 of us tasked with what seemed to be the impossible challenge of providing a compelling online OCA professional event in place of our annual conference. Marc reached out early to me in 2020 as this team first came together for Spring into Summer, and Marc expressed his clear intent to offer his leadership to us. We met regularly and were in touch constantly over a 6-month period. It was great fun. There was such wonderful camaraderie, and it was important work, and we all knew it and embraced it. Marc was clear that what we needed to offer was a mental health stream, and Marc eagerly and enthusiastically stepped forward to chair that stream. We will always be forever grateful to Marc for leading the way with clarity and with intent. Marc believed that every child, every camp leader, and every camp would benefit greatly from a thoughtful approach around mental health awareness and support. When we lost Marc last spring, it was less than 48 hours after our final steering committee meeting. We had just been together, and we celebrated a most successful event, and we so look forward to all working together again. Following Marc's passing, we knew right away we wanted to create space to celebrate Marc and to continue Marc's commitment and passion around raising the importance of mental health awareness and support within our camps and for our camp leaders. The Cooper Keynote today is our way to acknowledge Marc, his role with OCA, including spring into summer last year, and to thank Marc from the bottom of our hearts for championing mental health for the association. As much as many of us will remember Marc in our lives as a beloved member of the camping community and a great friend, it pales in comparison to the enormous loss of Marc for his family and from a camp standpoint at Camp Tamarack. How thrilled we are today to have Rick and Ellen Howard with us for a few minutes to remember Marc. Rick, Ellen, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's our honor and privilege to say a few words about our beloved friend, colleague, advisor, confidant, and extended family member, Marc Cooper, who tragically passed away last May. Marc being gone is still painful and surreal, and we continue to offer our deepest sympathies and condolences to his loving wife, Carly, amazing son, Jack, and Marc's huge group of friends, family, and camping colleagues who so deeply loved and cared about him.
As many of you know, Marc was an incredibly strong advocate for mental health in our community while struggling for some time himself. He was always there to listen, share his experiences, and support those around him. Marc's extensive involvement in the OCA included his work last year as the mental health stream chair. And in fact, Marc was proud to be working with the committee on the content of this program just days before his passing. Despite his commitment to mental health and heroic efforts, Marc tragically lost his battle.
To say that Marc was an integral part of our lives would be a massive understatement. We often say Marc was the star in our reality show. For 13 years, we spent almost every day together. Marc was the kind of friend you could only wish to have in your corner. Immensely kind, absolutely ridiculous, and hilarious with the biggest heart. We often kidded him that he had a world record for number of best friends, but somehow made each relationship feel unique, special, and heartfelt. In addition to the deep love he felt for his family and friends, Tamarack and the camping world were also at the essence of who Marc was.
It is impossible to put into words the special person Marc was. He spent over 3 decades on Duck Lake and made an amazing and lasting impact on and authentic connections with generations of Tamarack campers, staff, and families. He was always present day or night and was an outstanding mentor, leader, and role model who walked the walk and talked the talk. He believed in making every moment wow, whether coming to breakfast in a full fishing gear ensemble, wrestling a garbage can on stage, wearing his iconic hat collection, or even wearing wooden clogs and a bonnet on Visitors' Day. Only Marc. Marc was also a talented and professional artist who truly brought color to our world in every way.
Marc was uniquely thoughtful and gracious in his ability to recognize and thank others, even for the smallest of things. He had a unique gift for making everyone feel special and appreciated. Marc always had a stock of thank you notes on hand for those moments when he would make someone feel special by offering an encouraging word or recognizing a kind deed, special occasion, or noteworthy accomplishment. Tamarack carried on Marc's tradition, among others, during the 2021 season and will do so moving forward. Even for us, one time during the usual stress of summer, Marc gave us a night in coupon for dinner and an ice cream. So like Marc to be so thoughtful. Myself, I'll personally be grateful forever for Marc's hugs that made me feel so safe, loved, and supported. I will also cherish the amazing laughs, the emotional tears, and yes, the moments that we shared as we sing in the Tamarack Camp song.
Thanks to the OCA for so kindly and appropriately honoring and remembering Marc's contributions and compassion. We cannot begin to thank Marc for the countless ways he influenced and will continue positively to impact all of our lives. We look forward to Tamarack and the rest of the camp community carrying on this spirit. Camp will, of course, continue to be a special and magical place, and we are so lucky for the indelible mark he made.
Thank you, everyone.
So much, Rick and Ellen, for those incredible words and for helping us to honor the one that Marc was. I'd like to begin acknowledging that though we are meeting virtually, we are all on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. I am coming to you today from Brantford, Ontario, which is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, this place is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and I am grateful to have the opportunity to work, live, and play on this land. I'm pleased to be introducing you all today to our keynote speaker for our mental health stream. Bonita Eby is a burnout prevention strategist and owner of Breakthrough Personal and Professional Development, Inc. She specializes in burnout prevention and wellness for organizations and individuals at the intersection of health and leadership development. Bonita is on a mission to end burnout. Please welcome Bonita and her amazing message that she has for us today.
Thank you, Erin. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today with Ontario Camps Association. On a personal note, I have had the opportunity to be at different camps. I've seen so many youth and young adults and children have incredible life-changing experiences at camp. And so I'm a big fan. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today. So I am going to share my screen. So give me just 1 second. And here we are. Great. Well, again, thank you for having me here today. I know that for the past 2 years, we have experienced an epidemic of stress and burnout. And whatever your role is with the Ontario Camps Association, I know that you give it your all, making the world a better place. But what about your own mental health? Well, today I am here to provide you with practical strategies for overcoming stress, preventing burnout, and fostering positive mental resilience so you can thrive. Now, my name is Bonita Eby, and I started off in healthcare. I was a registered massage therapist working in with traumatic motor vehicle accident survivors in the hospital, and also owned my own clinic. Now, that is really hard physical work. So eventually, after about a decade, I took on a new role in leadership development with a nonprofit in town. Now, about almost 15 years into that career, I went through burnout. And I'm going to share a bit of my story with you today. Now, I'm an executive coach, a burnout prevention strategist, and owner of Breakthrough Personal and Professional Development. So whatever you are going through today, know that there is hope and there is a new chapter for your life. Let me share with you a bit about my burnout story. The focus of my role was around leadership development, and I thrived at this. Along with that was project management and training and equipping leaders, teams, and volunteers, which all goes with that role, and I loved it. It was a packed role. There was always more than I could possibly get done in a week, but I loved it. On top of that, though, I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on a crisis line. And to be honest, this is what did me in. My career was in a great place. I climbed the ladder and was excelling in my job. I put my heart into everything I did. I gave it my all. And sometimes it was too much. And although I loved my job, there was always too much to do and too many needs. To compensate, I arrived at work before anyone else did, went home when the lights were shut off. I worked when I was tired, I pushed and I pushed, and yes, I achieved. But over many years, all that pushing led to overwhelming stress and burnout. The needs were too many and too great. I heard hard stories on a daily basis and witnessed so much suffering. This all led to compassion fatigue. I expected so much of myself and was poorly equipped to manage all that I would encounter. I felt like I was failing myself, failing my organization, even though they would not agree with that, and failing those who needed my help. And that was a tough place to be. I was on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. So my work went with me wherever I went. It followed me into my evenings. It came with me into my weekends. And it was not uncommon for me to get a call in the middle of the night saying, you need to rush to the hospital now. And this all led to a great deal of anxiety. By the time that I resigned from my job, I absolutely dreaded hearing my phone ringing. Perhaps you can understand that feeling. But here's the thing, I was passionate about my job. I love the organization, I love the mission, vision, and values. I still do. I deeply wanted to make a difference in the world, much like you. But I had no grace for myself or what I faced on a daily basis. I thought that I should be able to handle it all. Well, that's not true. We all need supports around us. It hurt not being able to help everyone. And so while my story and your story will differ, I want you to know that as we talk about mental health today, I'm not talking from just expertise and all of my background in leadership development and research and healthcare. It comes from lived experience along with all of those things. I understand burnout. I understand compassion fatigue. I've been there. And when I was recovering from burnout, I went through years of isolation. So I've been there too. And during those years, there was a lot of uncertainty. So I'm going to talk with you today about mental health strategies to help you not only survive, but thrive. So let's talk about mental health. Being part of the Ontario Camps Association, whatever your role, whether you're an owner of a camp, a director, a manager, year-round staff, you're part of a helping profession. And that helping field presents a lot of different unique challenges that other people don't face. You often care for vulnerable people, whether that's children, youth, young adults, your staff team, perhaps yourself. And it's not a 9-to-5 job. And yet this is such important and rewarding work. Yet there can be a price to be paid when you're out there trying to make a difference in the world. Workplace burnout can occur when you're being on call day and night, and when you're supporting other people's mental health challenges, especially when it's beyond what you would have been trained in. You're hearing and witnessing people's hard stories, their grief, their loss, and this can lead to compassion, fatigue, and burnout. It doesn't have to go there. And we're going to talk about how we don't go there. But I know that this can be a real challenge and it can lead to your own mental health challenges. There are a lot of needs, and sometimes you put others ahead of yourself. On top of that, you've experienced isolation. So many Zoom meetings, uncertainty and stress. So let me ask you a question. How are you doing? How are you doing really? Do you find yourself at the top of that scale, somewhere near the 10, saying, I'm working at my best and thriving? Or do you find yourself more on the lower end of the scale toward the 1, saying, wow, I am feeling burnt out and depleted? Just take an internal check. Where are you today? And wherever you find yourself today, I want you to know that there is hope. Today, I'm going to share with you very practical solutions and strategies to support your mental health, because I and Ontario Camps Association and everyone you serve wants you to flourish. Now, if you hear anything today, if you take away just one thing from this talk today, I want you to hear this. You matter. And your mental health matters. You've heard the message before. I get it. You've heard that you need to take care of yourself, but there are just so many yabbits. Maybe you can identify. Yeah, but other people need my help. Yeah, but I have it better than other people. I have to be able to give. Yeah, but I don't have time to take care of me. Yeah, but my family needs me. I'm here to tell you that you matter, and so does your mental health. And the first step toward positive mental health is having the courage to talk about it. And that's what we're here doing today. So let's get started. In April of 2021, almost a year ago, Adam Grant wrote an article in the New York Times entitled, "There's a Name for the Blah That You're Feeling." It's called languishing. And this went viral. In it, he defined languishing as a place of being somewhere between flourishing and depression. And he says that it was the dominant emotion of 2021. Now, if he were sitting with us today, he might be saying it's a dominant emotion of February 2022. Hopefully that'll end soon. But here's what he has to say. He says that languishing is not quite burnout if you still have energy, and it's not quite depression if you still have hope. It's somewhere in between where you're just not feeling at your best. His article is based upon the research of Cooper Keynote out of Emory University in Georgia. So as we talk about this section, this is the research that we're going back to. Now, according to the research, the driving force behind languishing is loss, grief, and stress. So take a moment. Where in your life have you experienced loss, grief, and stress in the last 2 years? Throughout the pandemic, we've experienced loss of relationships, loss of autonomy. For many of you, you have not been able to even make decisions around whether you can run a camp or not. That's hard, that's loss, and I'm sure you've grieved over that. There's loss of interactions and frankly, a loss of normal. On top of all of that loss that creates grief, there's also the fact that we're experiencing isolation. And for some of us, there's been a loss of health or even a loss of loved ones. And that's been mentioned this morning already. All of you share a loss that was very, very meaningful to you. That loss is together. And then there is stress. The pandemic has increased our stress as a whole more than ever before. So what do we do about this? How does this affect our mental health? Well, to understand this, we're going to have a really quick basic lesson in Neuroanatomy 101. In the brain, you have two major sections. In the very top front of your brain, you have a place called the frontal lobe. This is where your higher thinking comes in, executive functioning, problem solving, and empathy. Now, in the other part of your brain called the brainstem, this is a part of brain that is absolutely obsessed with survival. It's often called the reptilian part of our brain because even reptiles have this part of the brain because it's all about survival. So without going too far, when stress occurs to us, the amygdala in our brain, which is in the brainstem, so the amygdala is in the brainstem, stress triggers the amygdala and it sets us into a fight, flight, or freeze response. It actually overrides our rational frontal lobe so that we cannot even think clearly. It just wants us to get out of dodge. This is a fear response. So stress and activation of the amygdala causes us to go into survival mode. And maybe you've heard about the fight, flight, or freeze responses. This is what the amygdala does. It sets us into a fight, flight, or freeze response for survival. And this is really important when we're experiencing acute stress. It's how we have survived as a species, frankly. But when stress continues over a long period of time, we enter into chronic stress. And this is where languishing comes in. We're processing predominantly in that lower area of our brainstem, the amygdala, and that causes an absence of well-being. So why does this matter? Well, according to the research, it shows that people who are languishing now have a significantly higher risk of developing depression or anxiety in the future. So let's look at what we can do to overcome languishing. The research shows that the single most important thing you can do to prevent languishing is to remove fragmentation. Now, fragmentation is when we keep having our thoughts interrupted. This sets off our amygdala and the fear response. Now, the very opposite is true as well. When we can enter a place of focus without interruptions, we can enter into flow, and this allows us to move into our frontal lobe, where we have our executive thinking, our higher functioning, we can decision make and solve problems and have empathy. That's where we want to be. So let's get really practical. How can we move away from fragmentation? Again, according to the research, the antidote to fragmentation that causes languishing is flow. Now, you may have heard of flow being called being in the zone. So at one time I was running marathons, and you've heard about it all the time. You're running and at some point you get in the zone. And it just feels so good, but it doesn't have to do with exercise. It can be in any place where we're super focused, we're not being interrupted. It's where everything seems to flow, where time stands still. It's where you're operating at your peak and you find yourself accomplishing a ton in very little time and with such joy. It's when you can think clearly and solve problems and offer meaningful empathy and connection. This is flow. So how do we get there? It comes down to removing fragmentation, removing interruptions, and creating physical, mental, and emotional peace. So let's apply all of this knowledge to real-life mental health strategies. My goal is that you're going to walk away from here today with interventions you can begin applying to your life today. We're going to begin with some really quick wins that'll make a significant difference to your mental health. And then as we proceed, we're going to go into deeper strategies. Let's begin with self-care. We're going to start with a simple one, exercise. You see, when we exercise, our brains are flooded with endorphins. Those are those feel-good hormones that just make us feel like $1,000,000. And this supports our positive mental health. It makes us feel more mentally and emotionally stable while also supporting our physical health. I would be absolutely remiss not to mention exercise when we're talking about mental health. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't have time to add one more thing to my life, and I get that. So let's talk about some ways that you can implement exercise into your day without having to add extra time, without taking up more precious time. Here are some ways that I do it. Taking a walk during a break. Could you, during a 5 or 10 minute break throughout the day, and if you're not taking breaks, let me tell you, it is so important for our mental health. So during a break, instead of running to the fridge to grab a snack or scrolling through social media, can you go outside and walk just for 10 minutes? Walk around the block, walk down the street, go to a park, wherever you're at. Can you get out for just a little bit of exercise? Is it possible, if you're having meetings throughout the day, can you choose one of those meetings to go away from Zoom and go out for a walk, have a walking meeting, take your phone with you, some earbuds, and whether you're walking down the street, walking through a park, walking at a nature preserve, down the trails, can you take one meeting a day to have as a walking meeting? Now, I realize that some of us are having back-to-back meetings all the time. And so again, I understand that. Can you do some very quick exercise just to get ready? So one of the things I often do is I'll get down on the floor and just do some push-ups. Just 20, 25 push-ups. It takes like 30 seconds to a minute. And you know what? It moves me out of my body and out of my brain and into my body. Just allows my brain to rest and gets those endorphins going so I feel good. Guess what I did before coming into this presentation today? I didn't do push-ups today, but I did do some yoga because I thought I want to get my breathing steady. I want to be focused and have some of those feel-good endorphins going through. It changes the way that we think. And then I encourage you to have some restorative exercise at least once a week, doing yoga or soccer or whatever it is that makes you feel good. Just get out of your head and into your body, give your brain a rest. The second sort of obvious one is sleep. Now, when we sleep, our brain has an opportunity to review and assimilate the events that we've experienced throughout the day. Our brains literally go through a cleansing process, removing old, unused neural pathways and reinforcing those ones that were used often. We're going to come back to that today. Sleep is essential to positive mental health. And sometimes when we're tired and we're drained, I get it that we just want to numb out. But quality sleep offers real solutions. While binge watching on Netflix on the couch with a bag of chips, that only numbs us out. Prioritize rest and good sleep. Nature. This is one of my favorite ones. Again, it sounds so simple, and yet a large body of research shows that nature has a powerful effect on our mental health. When we unplug from technology in nature, our brains have time to rest, regroup, and reframe. It allows us to enter into that state of flow. Now, some of the things that bring that about is when we're away from technology, we're already away from a whole bunch of interruptions. When we're in nature, we hear beautiful sounds that are calming to our nervous system. So just think about hearing the birds tweet in the background. Imagine hearing the wind go through the forest and the trees, hearing the squirrels just go through the brush at the bottom of the forest. What a babbling of a brook. Oh, it's so restful. And then there's also all of these plant pheromones in the air when we're in nature, which might sound crazy to you, but honestly, they are what we would call essential oils. When we're walking in a forest, we have the cedar essential oils in the air. They're actually affecting our minds, bodies, and emotions. And this can cause an extremely helpful way of reducing fragmentation and entering into a state of flow. Relationships. We are made for relationships, and we suffer when isolated for too long. And this is perhaps the elephant in the room today. During the pandemic, fostering relationships has been really tricky and may take more effort and creativity. But it is so important for our mental health to invest in our families, our friends, and our community. So whether you are single, married, have kids, don't have kids, whatever your situation, how can you creatively invest in your close relationships? Here's one of the ways that I do this. About once a week, I get together with a friend to go for a walk in the nature preserve. Now, we apply all the government mandates and safety protocols, but we get together and we go for a walk and we talk. Oftentimes it's for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So think about that. I get to connect deeply with a friend while getting exercise and doing so in nature. This literally just checked off 3 of the self-care strategies at once. Exercising in nature while fostering a relationship. And every time I exercise in nature, I sleep like a baby. So this one practice encompasses all 4 of these self-care strategies and dramatically improves my mental health. And so what I want you to understand from this is you don't have to have a whole bunch of extra time. It's not adding this and adding that and adding the next thing. It's looking at how you can take several different things that are helpful for your mental health and bring them together. Let's move on to technology, because technology is all around us, an important part of our everyday lives. But how do we make sure that technology is a helper and doesn't actually take over our lives and become harmful? The most important thing that you can do for your mental health in terms of technology is to turn off your notifications. This means setting your text messages to silent, silence your emails, turn off your social media notifications, and during parts of the day, whenever you can, and if you can at night, have your phone on silent. Now, I know for some of you, just telling you to turn off your notifications has triggered your amygdala and you're a little bit frazzled right now. So take a moment and take a deep breath, literally do it, and hear me out. I realize that your year ebbs and flows. And so this isn't going to work for you all the time, but ask yourself, what would happen if I shut off my social media today? What are the actual consequences of doing that? What if I shut off my email notifications so that I chose when I go to look at my emails? Same with text messages. Give yourself the gift of text silence whenever you can. Make it so that you choose when to look at your social media, your texts, your emails, rather than letting every ding of your phone dictate when you pay attention. Here's how I do it. All of my social media notifications are turned off all the time. I do not want every notification coming into my life, coming into the sound that's around me. I want those to be silent. And then I choose once or twice a day to check my social media, and I engage for a predetermined amount of time. Lots of research shows that the more time you spend on social media, and especially the more platforms, different channels you spend on, the more you do, the more affects your mental health. And this is especially true in youth and young adults. My text messages are set to silent unless I'm expecting to hear from someone, and my emails are always on silent. At 6 p.m. every day, I turn my phone to silent. Now I realize again that when you're in the middle of camp, you've got that going on, you might not be able to do this, but whenever you can. So in order to turn my phone to silent at 6 p.m. every day, what I do is within my phone, I have created, marked certain people as favorites so that people like my husband, my parents, my siblings can call through if there's an emergency. Another thing you can do is set your phone so that if someone calls back a second time within 3 minutes, then it will actually ring through. So it gives you a bit of a safety guard there. So you can let people know if there's an emergency, call twice, and it will ring through. At least that's how it works on an iPhone. And now I want you to know that this isn't always easy. As a matter of fact, I got up this morning, and when I decided to begin work, because I don't ever look at my phone first thing in the morning. I think that that's an important thing. I went and checked my phone this morning. It turns out that last night I received a phone call, and it was someone asking if I could present a workshop on burnout prevention either today or tomorrow. You know what? I missed that, and it's no longer available to me. And you know what? I am so grateful I didn't get that call last night and have to think, my goodness, can I pull it off when my focus is all about Ontario Camps Association today? So I want you to recognize that, yes, there are times when there's going to be something you miss, but for the sake of your mental health, it is just so important to turn off those notifications. And here's why all of this matters, because every single time you get a notification sound, so it's the noise, every single ding of a text message, a ping of Facebook Messenger, every ding of an email coming in, this triggers your amygdala, disrupts your thinking, and creates fragmentation. For thousands of years, we lived in nature and responded to noises as threats. But cell phones have only been around for a couple of decades, and our brains have not yet adapted to all of these interruptions. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between the stress of a ping of a text message coming in when you've been focusing or being chased by a lion. You trigger that stress cycle, and it doesn't look any different for a ping from a text message as it does for a lion. You go into fight, flight, or freeze. Your body, your mind does not differentiate. So every interruption then causes fragmentation in your brain, and this leads to languishing. And if you remember, the antidote to languishing is flow, which we can only enter when we have focus and silence. And I don't mean complete silence, but just lack of interruptions. And this allows us to operate at our higher functioning. So when it comes to our mental health, we have a choice. Will we allow stress to enter our minds and set off that stress cycle over and over and over throughout the day? Or will we make a simple choice to shut off our notifications whenever possible? Those notification sounds disrupt our calm, disrupt our thinking, causes fragmentation, and affects our mental health. But turning off those notifications allows us to enter into flow more easily, allows us to work at our best, and this reinforces restorative messages to your brains. So own your tech. Don't let tech own you. In this section, we're going to look at support systems, and I'm going to offer or present several different options to you. I'd encourage you to find one or more that suits you, but whatever you do, find a safe person to talk to. Whether you have benefits or not, I would encourage you to talk with a counselor on a regular basis. If you have a benefits package, if you're fortunate enough to have that, look for a counselor either in your area, or many therapists have gone to online and are offering online counseling across Canada. If you do not have a benefits package, there are many free resources available in your community to offer support. And from what we heard from Jeff today, the OCA actually has resources that you can call them about and receive a resource package, as well as on my website, www.break-through.ca. At the very, very top, you'll see an opportunity to download a mental health resources toolkit. It's right at the very front top. It's just there for the next few days. I put it there specifically for today, so it's easy to find. Now, I have chosen to see a counselor myself many times throughout my life, and I've found it so incredibly helpful. And I think the more we normalize this, the better for the people that we lead, when they can see from us that we take care of our own mental health and talk about it in just a normal way. Honestly, I believe that just like we need a medical doctor for our physical health, it is just so incredibly helpful to have a counselor for our mental health. Another option is to consider connecting with a faith community. Whatever your faith background and beliefs, consider finding a faith community that spreads harmony, peace, and hope, where you can have that interaction, and even if it's online at this time and eventually back in person, where you can connect with people who have a similar understanding and really, again, want to make the world a better place. Perhaps you can consider reconnecting with sacred texts that mean something to you, that hold meaning in your life and offer a positive message. Research shows that those people who engage regularly in spiritual practices have higher mental health scores. Now, for camp professionals, again, whatever your role is, talk to someone on your team. Find someone who you believe is trustworthy and would have the capacity to hear about what you're experiencing in mental health. It's so important for us to be able to move it from just our head, to be able to verbalize it and get it out of us so that emotionally it doesn't eat away at us. Now, you have to have someone that you trust to be able to do this with. Perhaps you have someone on your team. Perhaps you have a peer within the Ontario Camps Association, or even a leader in your community that you could talk with. And similarly, talk with your team leader about the challenges that you are facing, or perhaps you are the owner or director of your camp and you are the leader. Well, consider finding a mentor. Mentors are incredibly helpful. Whether that means a mentor from a different field or whether that's a peer mentor within your Ontario Camps Association. This can be incredibly beneficial for requesting support and debriefing what you have encountered during the week. Did you know that by law, counselors in Canada, whether we're talking about social workers, psychologists, psychotherapists, By law, they have to speak with a supervisor every single month to debrief what they've experienced and receive support. These are the professionals who are trained to hear hard stories and trained in mental health. So if they are required by law to have that kind of support, imagine what it would do for you. Next, I encourage you to create a mental health resources list, including your resources in your community. Now, again, I'm so thrilled to hear, Jeff, that you have a bunch of resources available with the Ontario Camps Association. I'm thrilled to hear that. Pass it around, please. Everyone who's here today, access those. And I also want you to take note of the resources that people are asking you for, or the challenges that are beyond your scope or ability. For instance, do you have women who come to you and say they need shelter for a night? Keep a list of local women's shelters. Do you have teens and young adults who need to talk to someone about their hard things in life or who are in crisis? Keep a list of crisis lines. There are many, many free crisis lines that children, youth, young adults, and even adults can access. Keep a list of free and subsidized counseling, both online and in your community. As a matter of fact, there are free apps that offer cognitive behavior therapy that are completely free to anybody in Canada. So even people who have no funding whatsoever to be able to afford these, there are still options. And again, there are some of those listed in my mental health resources. So then share this list among your team, your colleagues, and update it yearly. You do not have to do this alone. Utilize those community resources. And lead by example. Whatever your role, whether you lead a camp, whether you lead a team, a group of children or youth or young adults, ask them how they're doing. And remember that you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be there and show you care. At the end of the day, I just want to know that somebody cares. And then all of those resources that you now know about, refer them to those and follow up. What you demonstrate is far more powerful than anything you ever say. People are watching you, especially those people that you lead. So talk about your mental health. Share what you do, perhaps some of the strategies that we've talked about today or other ones. Be vulnerable and honest and open. Make it a safe place to talk about mental health. Have the courage to lead. And now we're going to go even deeper and we're going to talk about stress management techniques, because stress is at the heart of all mental health challenges. Now we're going to look at some very practical examples, but first, in order to do that, we need to understand how it all works together. So we need to have a basic understanding of how the brain works. Let's take a quick look at neuroplasticity. Our brain is constantly and continually renewing and regenerating itself, which is good news because it means that even if you've been struggling, your brain is working constantly to overcome those challenges. Your brain and your mental health are for you. Please remember that. Inside our brains, we have neurons. Neurons are brain cells, and they act as messengers transporting information around our brains and to and from our bodies. In order for information to travel from one neuron to the next, they need a bridge. Synapses act as an electrical or chemical conduit or a bridge, creating pathways, neural pathways around our brains. Our brains are constantly changing. They are consistently renewing and regenerating and growing, and they do this in response to stimuli, and this is called neurogenesis. Now, you don't have to remember all these terms. That's not important, but the principles are really important. Let me show you how this works. When your brain receives a message, it passes the information along via your neurons and synapses. This creates a neural path in the brain. And when you do the same message, when you have the same message repeated, more neurons are laid down to reinforce that message. And when the message is repeated over and over and over again, the message becomes ingrained in our brains, and it actually creates a pathway that almost becomes like a highway eventually when you use it over again. On the other hand, when a message is no longer repeated, and the message then is not reinforced. And over time, when the message is not repeated, the brain actually dissolves those neural pathways because they're not needed anymore. They never fully disappear, but they diminish significantly. So let me demonstrate this with a story. My sister lives in Northern Ontario, and she has beautiful forest all over her property, but she loves to snowshoe. And she had this dream that she'd be able to snowshoe from point A on her property to point B, but there was just no way through that forest. So in the summer, 2 years ago, she hired someone to come in and clear a few of the trees from the forest. And then after that, she and I got together and we began clearing a path through the bush using a hatchet and bush knife. I know it was so hard, but we over time created a beautiful path. Wasn't perfect, but we created a path to get from point A to point B. When winter came along, she got a whole dump of snow. So even though we had created an initial path, it was difficult to go through that very first time. So the first time she snowshoed, it was deep, it was hard, but she got through because there was an initial path. Now the second time was a bit easier. And throughout the winter, as she snowshoed day after day after day, that path became really well worn and the pathway became easy and open. This is how our brain works. When we have that same message go from point A to B, it lays down that pathway. At first, it's awkward and difficult, but as we practice or as we lay down that message, it reinforces it and it becomes easy and open. Now imagine with me that my sister decided that she didn't like snowshoeing anymore. That is not going to happen. But if she did that and she went for quite a while without snowshoeing that path, the brush would begin to grow back into that forest. And over years and years and years, over a long time, it would actually become impossible to find that trail. This is how our brains work. So what does this look like in real life? Let's say you experience stress. Let's say you're working on a project that's due at the end of the day, and it's going to be tight, but you're pretty sure you can pull it off. But then you receive a phone call that derails all your plans. It's pretty natural to go into the stress cycle. That neural pathway has been well ingrained. There's a highway through your brain that goes to that stress cycle. So you go down that path. But let's just say that you've learned a new stress management technique, like one we practice today. You practice that technique, creating a new message, one of peace. That puts down a new neural pathway. It's going to feel difficult and awkward at first, but each time you experience a stressful situation and you practice the same stress management technique, you reinforce that neural pathway and enter into a state of peace much easier. Each time you practice that stress management technique, your brain reinforces the message, puts down new neural pathways, and eventually it becomes your modus operandi. It becomes easier and easier. And because you're no longer using that old stress pattern, your body starts decreasing those neural pathways that reinforce stress. And over time, it actually becomes more natural for you to go into peace instead of stress. So to foster positive mental health, we need to provide consistent messaging to our brains to reinforce those positive neural pathways and replace unhelpful messaging so that they diminish over time. This happens via repetition. So to get started, I'm going to share with you a really quick and easy mindfulness technique that literally moves us from a place of that stress cycle into calm in just 1 minute. Now, because I want you to believe me, I'm going to have you actually do this with me right now, because we're going to lay down a new neural pathway in our brains together. It's simple. There's nothing weird about it. I'm going to have you close your eyes. And I'd like you to take your hands and with your fingertips, put them onto your chair or the couch or wherever you're sitting on. Just feel the fabric. Notice with your fingertips, what are you feeling? Really notice it. Is it fabric? Is it rough? Or is it smooth? What does it feel like? Now take a deep breath. What do you smell? Can you smell the coffee that you drank, that you have sitting on your desk next to you? Can you smell the oatmeal that you cooked this morning? Now move to listening. What do you hear? Listen intently. Do you hear the furnace in the background? Are you lucky enough to hear birds chirping outside? Now notice what you taste. Perhaps you can pick up on the tea that you drank this morning, or maybe the minty freshness of your toothpaste. What do you taste? Now open your eyes. What do you see? Focus intently on something that you're looking at. What colors do you see? What textures? Do you see patterns? Do you see movement? Now take a deep breath and imagine someone giving you a big hug. Now we're going to come back to this in just a moment, but I want you to recognize how you feel. By doing that simple technique that takes about 1 minute, you move out of the stress cycle and into calm. Now back to the topic of stress. When we experience stress, our bodies and our brains immediately move into a stress cycle. That prepares us for fight, flight, or freeze. Stress is all about preparing us for survival. And here's what this looks like. We're going to go back to that same example I shared before. You're working on a project, it's due at the end of the day, and it's an important deadline. You're on track to accomplish everything, though it's tight, but suddenly you get a phone call that derails everything. Your amygdala in your brainstem realizes that there is a problem and goes into survival mode. To prepare for a fight, flight, or freeze response, your body responds because it wants to be able to fight, get ready to run, or freeze. And so some of the symptoms that you'll experience from that are a rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, tight muscles, jitters in your stomach. And because your amygdala has hijacked your frontal lobe, you can't think clearly. Your thoughts spiral out of control, and those thoughts make you even more stressed and perpetuate the problem. Does this sound familiar? Can you relate? Well, what do we do about that? How do we apply all that we have learned about neuroanatomy and neuroplasticity to support our mental health? I'm going to lead you through a 4-step process. The first step is to recognize the physical symptoms of stress in your body. See, anxiety is not a response to our circumstances. Anxiety is a response to the physical symptoms of stress. Our fight, flight, or freeze response was meant to happen only in dangerous situations. But in today's world, we're experiencing stress not only multiple times a day, but oftentimes multiple times each hour. And our physical responses to stress are meant to be a warning sign to make a change. But because we experience them so often, we've become incredibly proficient at ignoring them. So our first step is to begin to identify our physical stress signals. So let me share what that looks like for me. When I become stressed, I notice that my breathing becomes erratic. I notice I can't get a full breath and I'm breathing up here in my chest instead of my diaphragm. I also notice that I get tight in my shoulders. How about you? Close your eyes for a moment and just think, where do you experience stress in your body? Perhaps you get a headache, a tight jaw, neck pain, butterflies in your stomach, or maybe sciatic pain. Over the next month, I want you to focus when you get stressed and figure out, what do you experience physically when you're feeling stressed out? I want you to become familiar with those bodily signals, because you want to use those signals to stop yourself, take a step back, and move into part 2. So the second step is that once you've identified those stress signals, you want to replace the stress with calm. And we do this by practicing that mindfulness practice. And so in order to reinforce that neural pathway that we just laid down a few minutes ago, we're going to do this again. So close your eyes. It only takes a minute. Close your eyes. Take your fingers, and I want you to place them on your clothing. Notice the textures. What do you feel? Switch to your listening. What do you hear? What do you taste? Take a deep breath in. What do you smell? And now open your eyes. What do you see? Now take another deep breath and imagine someone giving you a big hug. So by doing this simple exercise, you short circuit the survival response. You've stopped the amygdala from perpetuating that fight, flight, or freeze response. Now you're back in your frontal lobe, where you can think clearly, problem solve, and have empathy. And this is where you want to be. Now remember, we have this incredible friend, neuroplasticity, that is on our side and wants to transform our thinking. The key is to reinforce positive messaging and remove the negative messaging. So here's how we do that. We want to remove the thoughts that are harming and replace those thoughts with ones that are healthy. By choosing the way we think, which we can now do now that we're back in the frontal lobe, we have the opportunity to repeat positive messaging and stop the negative messaging. That's only possible when we're in our frontal lobe. So let me show you how to do that. This is step number 3, and it's to identify the thoughts that are harming. Another way to say this is, what thoughts escalate your stress? So let's go back to that same example I gave earlier, where you are diligently working on a project that's due at the end of the day. You're working hard, you think you can get it done, but suddenly you get a phone call that derails all your plans. What thoughts go through your head? Perhaps it's thoughts like this: I can't believe this is happening. This is so unfair. There's no way I can get this done, and I'm going to fail miserably. I'm going to look like an idiot. I'm going to have to work overtime tonight and miss supper with my family. My son will never forgive me. While there may be small grains of truth within those thoughts, they tend to be overblown based on feelings rather than objectivity. By changing our self-talk, we have the ability to rewire our brains for good. So the final step of this 4-step process is to replace harming thoughts with helpful thoughts. This does not mean lying to yourself, not at all. It means taking a renewed perspective. So for instance, what thoughts de-escalate your stress? You'll have your own, but let me give you a couple of examples. What if you think, I'm not going to be able to finish everything to the level that I had hoped, but it's going to be good enough. I'm going to call the person who's relying on this deadline and ask, is there any wiggle room that I could have this in tomorrow instead of today? And maybe they'll say yes, and whew, okay, that's taken care of. Or maybe they say no, and you just share what has happened, hope that they are going to be graceful. And if they're not, understand that you cannot control their reactions. What if you think, I'm going to go for a little walk outside to refocus and put in a couple extra hours tonight? Or my family are going to be disappointed because I don't make it home for supper tonight, but I'll be home in time for bedtime. And I'm going to read my son's favorite story to him. These kinds of things decrease our stress. I'm going to consciously let go of the anger, stress, and frustration I'm experiencing because I cannot control it. And instead, I'm going to do the best that I can and let go of the rest. We have chosen a new message. Our neurons have passed that message along via synapses and created a new neural pathway. Now, every time we experience stress and repeat this pattern, we repeat that helpful messaging and over time, rewire our brain. This is a very, very practical way to rewire our brains for positive mental health. So here's what we've just done. We've identified our physical stress symptoms. We've calmed ourselves with mindfulness so that we can think logically. We've identified our harmful thoughts and replaced them with healthy thoughts. This is an incredibly practical way to support our mental health in everyday situations. I'm going to leave you with just a few resources. If you go to my website at www.break-through.ca, you will find a free burnout assessment. It's right in the navigation panel. You cannot miss it. You can download this. You are free to use it for yourself and use it with your team. Many organizations, anywhere from corporate to nonprofits, use this with their team every quarter or so in reviews. In a camp situation, you might do that each week or each month with those that you're leading and just seeing where they're at. It provides you a lot of good questions as well to be able to open the conversation around mental health. Also on my website is a blog. There are many articles to support both your personal and organizational health. And in particular, the most recent blog is on 10 ways to reduce workplace stress. So this goes above and beyond what we talked about today. And lastly, like I mentioned before on the website, you'll see a bar at the very, very top of the homepage, and you can download that mental health resources toolkit to get you started. Thank you so much for having me here today. I wish you the very best on your mental health journey.
Thank you so much, Bonita. So much of your presentation I know resonated with me, and I imagine so many of us. I can't count the number of times that I've used those yeah buts as an excuse, because I feel that responsibility to care for others before and often instead of myself. But it's important to remember, as you said, that preventing burnout is not always going to be easy, but it is possible. To our members, I also want to remind again that everyone that mental health supports are out there for you. The OCA office is a really wonderful resource, as are the incredible peers that we have in this membership. You're not alone in your journey. Thank you all for taking time this morning as we kick off OCA Reconnects, and we look forward to welcoming you back this afternoon for G. Boswell Buck's session on magnetizing marketing in uncertain. If you're willing to stick with us for a couple of minutes, if any questions, you can share it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have not been able to watch the chat, but if there's anything in there, Erin, I'm happy to respond if you would like to present those to me.
Absolutely.
Erin, I'm sorry, you are going in and out for me just a little bit, so I might just, can we try again?
Can you hear me now?
It's going in and out a little bit, but that's okay. I'm wondering if there are some questions or if you'd like me to stop my video.
Here, we'll try this.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, it's the earbuds. So no questions right now, just a lot of really great thanks. So I think that's it. If there are any other questions that do come up, feel free to send them along to the OCA office and we can try and get you connected. Bonita, again, thank you so much for your time. I think this presentation was really, really valuable for us.
Right, I'm so grateful. And thank you to every single one of you. Honestly, I don't say it lightly. I really mean it. You are making the world a better place. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had a couple of mentions throughout, just people wondering about the session being recorded. As we mentioned at the beginning, for those of you that missed it, the session has been recorded and will be shared with attendees a little bit closer to the summer, as you know, the office and Bonita really did see the value of being able to share this with our staff teams, as I know many of us have heard these messages and really feel like it's important to pass those along within our organizations. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Bonita. You are good. I think we are logging through, and thanks again.
Right. Thank you so much. I'll stick on here just for a couple minutes.
Perfect.
But I will take I'll mute.